Okay, I'll let Evan know that we're recording. And Bob is not joining. So I will start sharing the screen. Because the Torah portion today is called, hold on one second. Oh, sorry. Here we go. Misspell there. It's burying the parents with a Y, of course. Burying the parents. So the Torah portion is Vayechi. And yet we start reading the portion with the text that describes how Jacob is dying. Where else do you remember that the portion starts with the word that has to do with the life and yet talks about the death?
Hi, Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah.
Exactly. Haye Sarah, right? So it's interesting. It starts, and Sarah lived. And so look how this Torah portion starts. Jacob lived 17 years, yeah, and yet afterwards we're talking about his death. And so it was, you know, as I read it, I was trying to figure out what we should focus on, it really touched my heart how Joseph was really involved in his dad's burial, and how Jacob was so particular also about the way he wants to be buried. And that led me to think that, you know, it's very hard when we part with our parents, and no matter what age they leave this world. Unfortunately, my mom was way too young. She was 55. It's difficult to sit by the bed of your mom or dad who is dying, and then make a decision also in terms of the burial itself. And sometimes, you know, we have family involved, and you know, they may have their opinion on how the parents should be buried. So I know it's a sad topic, but an important one. And for many of you, it has been in the past. For some of you, you still have to face it. So that's my introduction. So we're gonna start with the first one. Is I read Jacob lived 17 years in the land of Egypt, so that the span of Jacob's life came to 147 years. Not bad, right? And then I didn't put any commentaries to this introductory verse, but then I'll have commentary to the next one. So who wants to read Genesis 47:29?
I'll read it.
Okay.
And when the time approached for Israel to die, he summoned his son Joseph and said to him, "Do me this favor, place your hand under any thigh as a pledge of your steadfast loyalty. Please do not bury me in Egypt." Oh, under my thigh.
Mm-hmm. And Bob Gold just joined.
Okay. Why would placing a hand under the thigh? I mean, I would have thought maybe placing it over the heart or something.
No, so
this is the source of the word testimony, I believe. He wants his son to swear on his balls, his testicles. That he will do
okay.
No, it's not just that. If you may recall, how did Isaac bless Jacob?
Something with his arm.
I
know that.
It wasn't the circumcision, was it?
No. When he instead of blessing Esau, he blessed Jacob. The same thing. So back then, the way the parent would bless a child, it was like you put the child was supposed to put the hand under the hip.
Wasn't that how Jacob was able to deceive Isaac, because he had hair?
Yes, exactly. Because Isaac touched, and you remember that Rebecca gave him the fur coat to cover his hand. Exactly. So that it was just the ritual of a blessing. That's how it went. I know it's a little strange, but that's why it says here in the same way that Jacob was blessed. So he just mimicking his dad's way of blessing. Mm-hmm. And so, like you swear also, there's a blessing, a swearing. So Rashi, can you continue?
Not with the Hebrew.
No, of course. ויקרבו ימי ישראל למות.
And when the days of Israel's death approached, every one of whom it is stated that his days drew near to die, did not strain to the age of his father. No, I'm sorry, did not attain to the age of his father. Since some editions add, Isaac lived 180 years, whereas Jacob lived only 147. Similarly, it is said to the case of David, his days drew near and he lived 70 years, whereas his father reached the age of 80.
So in other words, this is just, and some of the commentary is not exactly to my point, but I think what Rashi means is that he drew near, meaning that it was his death approached faster than it did for his father.
Is there ever any discussion, explanation, or why in the beginning people lived so much longer? I mean, as we could see here, each generation was living shorter.
Not that I recall the discussion, but I will certainly make a research on that. But yes, you're right, Arlene, because we first we read over for like 300 years, then it goes down to 200 years.
It was like 900 years, wasn't he?
900, yes, 900 years, and so gradually it lessens and lessens. I don't know, maybe because they stopped being vegetarian.
I wonder if years are counted years as we count them now.
Yeah, that's what I wonder. The same thing, Judy.
Days in the year.
But then with Moses, that's it. Moses drew the line, 120 maximum tops. That's it.
Yeah. I had heard a commentary about Jacob only living to 147. He should have lived to 180. But when Joseph introduced him to Pharaoh, this is my father, and the Pharaoh says, "How are you?" And Jacob says, "Well, my life has been really difficult and very strenuous." And the number of words that he said that basically condemned his own life were the number of words that brought from 180 down to 147.
Why? What was said?
Well, it's like, don't complain, you know.
No, but it's a midrash. This is not, it's a midrash, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think they looked at the number of words that were spoken in Hebrew, and it was like 33 words or something like that.
Yeah, that's a numerical. So probably it's like a Zohar or something explanation, because they like to deal with a numerical.
I mean, I heard this years ago, so I think I'm correctly interpreting it. But
and here's another Rashi on Chesed ve'emet. So right here, mercy and truth. Who wants to read that one?
I'll read. The mercy shown to the dead is mercy of truth, true, disinterested kindness, since one cannot hope for any reward.
So what do you think Rashi means by that with regards to Jacob?
Well, because you can make a pledge after someone passes away, and there's not really going to be any reward. You're honoring their wishes when they can't ever say thank you or pay you back or anything. And that's like a really high level of mitzvah.
Right.
We have a reading in our, before we say Mourner's Kaddish, that says, we do our best homage to our loved ones that have passed away by living our lives as they would have expected us to live. And I see that very parallel to what's said here.
or mercy that will be shown to the dead person by giving a respectful burial.
And also the cleansing of the body. You know,
Right.
not just
Tahara.
have payback from the person who passed. I know my husband, may rest in peace, was honored so greatly by friends doing that mitzvah for him. And they did it for their love of him and knew they weren't going to get anything in return.
Well, but they're not getting anything physical in return, but I would say that people do get in return. When those people who did what they did, Judy, I think that they internally did get a big return.
And in a way, you know, when we respect the dead and we're commanded to accompany a dead for burial, right? It's one of the like top commandments. It also comes back to us eventually. And also we feel good when we honor the dead person. So even though, you know, it's arguable whether or not the deceased can, his or her soul can see it, feel it, but in a way there are certain things that we do not so much even for the deceased as for ourselves to honor the memory that will remain with us eventually.
Remembering to do that you did a good thing. That's kind of
Yeah.
a nice thing to remember.
Right. Ellen, you want to read next one?
Sure. When Israel's time to die drew near, he called his son Joseph, which was in the final year of his life, for he felt in himself the exhaustion and increasing weakness, and though he was not ill, he knew he would not live long, and therefore he called his son Joseph.
So pretty common, right? When our parents are not already, they feel that time is nearing, they want us to be near so that we are there for them when, you know, God forbid, and I mean, when eventually, in reality is when the time comes and they will be no longer with us. So it's quite understandable that Jacob would ask his son to come to him, right? And in this case, Israel, I mean, Jacob is Israel, right? We understand that's the same person, yeah. Jacob and Israel.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty straightforward, that one. Okay.
Yeah, Rabbi Yina?
I
mean, it's probably nothing significant, but I'm just curious, like why in this particular reading, they call Joseph Yosef, where in other things he's called Joseph.
Oh, no reason. It's just the translation. Sometimes they translate it with an English name, and sometimes
they translate. So there's no significance in using the Hebrew, the English. Just okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
One of my grandsons' name is Yosef Baruch.
Hi, Bob. Bob is joining us from the car.
From the car is where I am.
Yeah, we're on the portion by Yehi, and the topic is burying a parent. On the portion by Yehi.
Right.
Okay, Sephora.
What happened in Genesis up to now?
What?
What happened in Genesis up to now?
Oh, well, so we're okay. Okay, it was a joke. Got it. Ilana, do you want to read this one?
Sure. Al na tikbereni b'Mitzrayim. Don't bury me in Egypt. Even temporarily in a coffin, as was done with Joseph, Yaakov reasoned that if he allowed himself to be interred even temporarily, Joseph would never be allowed to take his remains to the land of Canaan at a later date. They would argue that the honor done to him in burial in the soil of Egypt was adequate as it had been for the most outstanding kings, We must understand the preoccupation the Egyptian had with a cult of death and what they presumed to be their afterlife. The whole culture of that people revolved around burial, hence the pyramids.
So this is a lot to discuss here in this commentary by Sephorna, right? It's excellent. And exactly like right to the point that I wanted to make with my topic. Yaakov, Israel, Jacob, Israel is very specific, right? About where at least he doesn't want to be buried, and that is in Egypt. So in other words, we talked about, I think most of you were on the Zoom this Friday night, that we talked about the assimilation and adopting many cultures. And yet, when it comes to the burial, and I have experienced that so many times when a family comes to me, either American or Russian Jews, and sometimes a majority of family wouldn't even be Jewish anymore. They would all, interfaith marriages, and the second generation already don't even have to do anything with Judaism. And yet they want to bury their Jewish parent in a Jewish manner. So, and I always found it fascinating. And, I would have sometimes like a whole crowd, maybe like another Jew who is somewhat practices Judaism, and the rest are not. And yet they would still insist on having a rabbi and having a Jewish, proper Jewish burial. While actually some and more Jews started cremating. But so you can either share what do you think about this paragraph or any of your experiences in life.
One experience I had when my father passed away is that we had a lot of non-Jewish friends at the time come to the Shiva Minions, and they said, how much they really appreciated the Jewish traditions of, a fast burial, funeral, and then Shiva, and how nice it was that it was in the home. And, there just seems to be so many positives that the non-Jewish world seems to take from what we do, what our traditions are, our rituals.
So why do you think it's so important for Jacob to be buried out in the land of Canaan and not in Egypt?
Knew that the land of Israel was promised to Abraham, and really wanted to make sure that the established territory was marked that way, especially with the caves of Machpelah.
Right.
I just saw today on the news that the fellow who was in jail for spying for Israel.
For Israel,
yeah. Against the Jew.
The guy with the name begins with a P?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, he just returned. He was not exonerated, but let go after 15 years, and he arrived in Israel. And the only thing he did as he got off the plane was he got down on his knees and kissed the soil of Israel. So that the soil of Israel is something so important to the Jews. Even to this one who gave the stuff to the Arabs.
Being in the land of their fathers and forefathers.
So it also reminded me of many cemeteries that I visited, and sometimes families fly from all over the country or drive to a certain cemetery where the plot was bought, it's important for them that it's their family plot and to bury their parent in that particular cemetery, right? Not like they would fly the body unless the parents were in Florida, and oftentimes the plots are, let's say, in New Jersey, Long Island. So The children would fly the body of the deceased to New Jersey or in Long Island, whatever, and have a burial there. So it's just, it reminded me of also the importance of the place, not only because it was Israel, but because his ancestors, and he later will read, his ancestors were buried there.
Yeah. Well,
Also, maybe the fact that if he was afraid if he was buried in Egypt, again, none of the family would be able to come and pay the respects.
Yes.
Where like the same thing you're talking about, if let's say the burial is at least, within a driving, distance, people can come and pay the respects, where if it's another part of the country, unfortunately, that's not too, likely to happen.
I guess maybe that's what
it was.
I guess it's.
Wait, one person at a time. Ellen, go ahead.
I guess that's one reason that maybe when my daughter passed away, I bought the plot next to her for me. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it makes sense, Ellen. It totally makes sense.
It was important to me when my mother died in Albuquerque that I have her brought back to New Jersey, because we do have a plot. The two churches on Main Street in Sakasana.
Yes.
Her mother is buried there. There were plots, spaces still in that one. Her mother, a batch of her grandparents, great-grandparents, and my great-greats. A lot of my family is buried there. And some of them are Civil War and Revolutionary War ancestor is buried in the Methodist Church in Flanders. When you go down hillside and make a left turn, that little church, I have a Civil War great grandfather who's buried in there. And my grandmother, when I was boarding with her, would always have me take her to the cemetery on Decoration Day.
Mm-hmm.
And after she was staying with my mother, it was still important for me to go on my own. And Eric does it now, even when I'm not here. He'll go around to the graves of our ancestors there. Now, Mother was saying, well, she'd like to be buried there, but it was too expensive. So don't do it and leave her in Albuquerque. And she also did not want to be cremated, although that's my personal preference.
I think people
So I respected the non-cremation, but I brought her back to New Jersey where she could be with her parents and a sister and the ancestors.
I think people just want to feel that even after this, they're with family and friends. After Judy's husband passed, and Judy bought the site next to him. Judy, I hope this is okay for me to talk about.
Thank you, it's fine. We're gonna have a party over there at night.
Because Amlin and I bought the sites right next to Lou and Judy. The Adells bought 2 sites right there.
And we're there too.
Okay. So,
see, I know how to have a party.
So we're all going to be there.
I'm going to be there too.
All right, speaking of party, then, since we're having this little dark humor. So I buried my mom, and some of you already know, at the Hebrew Cemetery, the Mount Freedom Cemetery in Randolph.
Yeah, we're all talking the same one.
It's the same one.
We're just across the the path.
Yeah,
That's all we are.
I love the cemetery. It's my favorite cemetery. if there is such thing as my favorite cemetery. So,
one side of the path, the other side of the path.
So, but I'm thinking, what if Tony decides to move, or we decide to move, in a different state? It will be devastating for me to leave my mom. I mean, I would feel like, as it is, she's sort of like, among. But speaking of among non-Russian speaking, actually, there are 2 Russian ladies next to her, buried next to her, of about the same age. And I was like, and my mom was always very social. So I always sort of like, laughed to myself that even after she died, she found the social circle there.
You have to laugh. You have to laugh because that's.
You know what I found as we get older, it's easier for us to discuss our own passing and as you just said, dark humor, but to make jokes about it than when we're younger, or at least that's the way I find it.
I think that's absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just with age, we become more realistic. When you're young, you live like life will never end. And when you get older, you just become realistic that, you know, Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach. God has given, God has taken. And then Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. Praise be the name of God, because that's the path of life. It's there's nothing we can do about it, at least not yet. Maybe at some point scientists will come up with an elixir of life, but
I don't think I want that.
I hope not.
When my husband passed, my daughter couldn't believe that I didn't want to bury him with his parent, you know, in the same cemetery as his parents. And I said, well, then I would never go because it's out on the island. And I just felt I wanted to be closer if I, you know, for when I go visit. But I don't believe you have to really go to the cemetery. I just go to check and make sure there's no, you know, damage or whatever. Because you're always thinking about that person. But I just didn't want to bury him that far away.
mm-hmm.
You know, so everybody has a different take on cemeteries and visiting and where to be buried. And I have to find that comfort.
And I find it used to be, as you were saying, that people would buy great big family plots. And there used to be organizations that did this. It doesn't seem to be the norm as much anymore.
Well, people still buy plots.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
I'm sorry, just to interrupt one thing, as long as we're talking about this, Alan wanted to just say.
I have a question.
You got to put your head down.
Yes, Al.
Okay.
Alan, bend over. Oh, there you go.
I inherited from my father 10 plots out in Huntington from the Knights of Pythias. The lodge does not exist anymore because while the lodge still existed, I offered to give them back and they didn't want them. I think it's Mount Herod. I'm not even sure which cemetery it is. It's a Jewish cemetery, obviously. What do you do? I mean, at this point in time, it's going to be unused forever.
Unless if you know anybody that needs a plot.
Yeah, you just resell them.
No, we can't.
I don't know how. I don't even know how to do that.
But we're willing.
Right,
I'm willing to donate them.
Alan, we can discuss it after the lesson. I mean, after the session. But I'm glad that you jumped in. Maybe next time you can join us.
Well,
okay.
All right, not a problem. Thank you very much.
No problem. We'll talk.
Yeah.
I have a slight problem in this regard. Gary is buried in Flemington. His family had 4 plots there and his parents are in Flemington. And I chose to have him there rather than in Mount Freedom, our temple one, because we had a lot of good times in Flemington. He grew up there. We used to bike a lot in the area. And it's interesting that that's where Mark and Chrissy now live.
Mm-hmm.
So it would make sense. Of course, I want to be near Gary. But since I've always wanted to be cremated, part of me says, well, but most of the ashes there, I'd still kind of like to have some of them go in that Methodist cemetery with the rest of a lot of my ancestors, which is kind of odd. And then I think it would still be nice. I used to tell Gary if I went, you know, some of it in Flemington and take some of the ashes to Sandia Crest in Albuquerque and bury them up there on the crest and take the rest, put them in an open basket on the back of the bicycle and leave it open and give me a last ride and scatter me on the wind.
So, okay. I appreciate everybody sharing.
I can do it.
The cremation is a whole separate topic. So getting back to Yaakov, to Jacob, again, it's interesting that he really doesn't want, and he indicates, right, Sephora explains that he doesn't want to go by Egyptian tradition of embalming, although not on, but he was embalmed after all, but the tradition of having this idea of the afterlife, in which clearly Yaakov didn't believe. And it is important to him to be buried according to a Jewish tradition rather than within the Egyptian culture. So not only the place for him is important, but also the Jewish traditional burial, I think he's talking about.
Weren't his remains taken out after the slavery, after 400 years?
Joseph's.
Oh, Joseph's remains were taken.
Joseph's remains, because Joseph, as we're going to read a little in a few seconds, Joseph got permission from Pharaoh to go and bury Jacob in the land of Canaan.
That's right. Okay, it was Joseph. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he remained in Egypt, he would essentially be eventually remembered more as an Egyptian.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as a Jew, he would be buried according to those customs and would never get back to his own homeland.
Right. So let's read from Bereshit Rabbah. Who didn't go yet? Elana?
I gotta go.
You went. Well, oh, you gotta go? Okay, yeah. Sorry. Thanks for joining.
Good subject. Bye.
Bye. Happy New Year.
Healthy, safe. Happy New Year, Ilana.
Happy New Year to you too.
Okay, Claudia, you want to read Bereshit Rabbah?
Okay. And Israel approached the time of dying. It is written, no one rules over the wind to restrain the wind, and there was no ruling over the day of death. Rabbi Yehoshua of Sichnin said in the name of Rabbi Levi, the trumpets which Moses made in the wilderness were hidden by the Holy One, who is blessed, when Moses neared death, so that no one else would sound them while they were coming to him. As it is written, gather to me all the elders of your tribes, in order to fulfill what is stated, and there is no ruling over the day of death. And so too, when Jacob neared death, he began to lower himself before Joseph and said to him, please, if I have found favor in your eyes. When did he say this? As he was approaching death, as it is stated, and Israel drew near to the time of dying.
So the difficulties that rabbis have here, I think, is the phrase that he began to lower himself before Joseph. So what does it mean? Why would he lower himself before Joseph as he was about to die?
Well, only that, the sinking of the person. I mean, if you're standing up and you're about to die, you kind of go down.
Right.
It's purposely or just out.
It's a sign of
you can't continue standing. You have to lower yourself. You're eventually in bed.
It's a sign of respect, and also Joseph had this prophecy that everybody was going to bow before him anyway, his brothers and I think his father. Wasn't that part of the dream? Going back a few chapters.
All the chiefs bowed to him.
Yeah, but that's a very good point, Don, that everyone will bow to him. Like, yeah.
Yeah. One of those.
Also, as a father honoring his son, which is against the tradition, it's enforcing how important this is to him, that Joseph accede to these wishes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also kind of see, along with what Don's saying, is that it's kind of like he's saying, you're next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's kind of like, as you're dying, you're losing your power, and the living is keeping or gaining the power.
Mm-hmm.
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 Then I was wondering, the way it's worded is that Jacob is hoping that Joseph has good thoughts about him as a father. You know, did he do a good job as a father and as a person? When he says, have I found favor in your eyes? That's kind of more, you know, I hope I did well.
I think it's also a sign of supplication that he's asking Joseph to do something pretty big here, to leave his home and to take the family and everybody back to Canaan, so that he was, in a way, begging him to do this.
So yeah, that's why he lowered himself, right? Because he has this enormous task to ask of Joseph, right?
Right.
Yeah, because you know, to travel with the whole, he has probably responsibility at the court of Pharaoh, but he has to leave it. We probably would have taken a little more than just a few days, right? Going back and forth. So Zohar, let's see what Zohar says about it. Maybe Ellen?
Oh, sure. And when the days depart from this world, they all approach the supernal king, as it is written, and the days drew close for David to die, and the days grew close for Jacob to die. When a person is in this world, he is not aware of, nor does he look for the reason he was created. For him, every day is considered as if it passes by in emptiness. And when the soul leaves his world, it does not recognize the path through which it is elevated, because the path that leads up to the place where the luminous, sublime soul shine is not. Whoa.
Whoa. Well, it's Zohar, right? I mean, I did not study Zohar. I'll be up, you know, honest with you. But so a lot of sort of like underlying meaning and mysticism there. I think in the middle, it's something that you referred in the beginning to the fact that Arlene said that when we're younger, we don't appreciate the closeness of death and how fragile our lives are and how we need to cherish every single day, because as we're younger, we don't understand how important it is to live your life to the fullest, right?
Young
That's how
think we're immortal.
Also, earlier, I think that we said that Jacob didn't want to be buried in Egypt because he didn't want to agree with or believe in this whole afterlife that the Egyptians believed in. But here it sounds like there's belief, maybe a different afterlife, but still a belief in an afterlife. If not the whole body, what makes you you?
Well, the soul, it talks about the soul because in Judaism, we don't believe in afterlife as like, you know, you're resurrected and you continue to enjoy everything that you take with you to
okay, so
the
that's
coffin.
what they meant, really afterlife, not just a different type of existence. Okay, I misunderstood.
So the soul, you know, we in Judaism, we believe that soul is like a separate entity. And I think we talked about in one of our sessions that soul is recognized to have like separate from the body. And, you know, Jews actually do believe in that. Some Jews believe in that. Not proven. We can't see that. We can't see it happening. But there is a suggestion that soul continues to live even when the physical body is no longer functioning. And that in a way can be comforting for us Jews, right? Because we don't believe in heaven as in, you know, that the person just like turns into angel and flies to heaven. But the soul is hovering somewhere in the atmosphere. So that's why I think it says in Ellie, because the path to that leads up to the place where luminous sublime souls shine. Luminous sublime souls shine. Not the body, but the soul.
Right, it sounds like a heavenly type place.
Yeah. So, you know, the Zohar, whoever wrote it, they think that the souls do also exist and go up.
Isn't there some traditional Jews that also believe that when Mashiach comes, that there will be, you know, it kind of parallels a lot of Christian thought,
Right.
that the souls will be resurrected.
Yes, resurrected and brought back to be in Israel. They'll be all gathered from all over the world.
It's going to be a very crowded country.
Yes.
So well, it may be crowded, but if it's the souls, they don't have the physical being, it's just the soul.
Right.
Right?
It's a different dimension. It's not the three dimensions that we know of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows? We shall see. We shall see.
It's very interesting.
Something to look forward to.
Well, I like it where you shine.
Well, that previous paragraph, the last two words is not. I didn't follow what that is meant. So shine is not.
Yeah, and the other part of that is it does not recognize the path.
Well, that we can understand, you know.
Yeah.
Well, we don't understand the paths of our own lives.
Right, that's true.
What's going to happen this afternoon, you know?
Yeah, but it's not.
You may not, you know?
The place where the luminous warm souls shine.
But it, yeah, is it
I'll hit you with a question.
It's enigma. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like a Sundance movie or like a foreign movie.
Right.
It leaves
Right, leaves it open-ended.
Genesis 47:30. Judy, I think you didn't go in.
I'll try. You know, my vision, but it should be okay.
I meant Judy, but Judy fast. But you can. But Judy Zucker, you can try also.
Yeah. When I lie down with my fathers, take me up from Egypt and bury me in their burial place. He replied, I will do as you have spoken.
He, of course, is Joseph. Okay. And so he's an obedient son. He says, I will do it, right? And by the way, Jacob says, when I lie down with my fathers, meaning when I'm dead, right? When I die. Mm-hmm. Okay. Judy, can you read this, or is it too small of a?
No, I think I'll pass.
Okay, so Judy fast then.
Okay.
Well,
This of, and I can't read the Hebrew too well.
It's okay. V'shachavti im avoti.
Okay, without the vowels is a little tough.
Yeah.
Is the connecting link with the beginning of the verse above. Put thy hand beneath my thigh and swear unto me that you will not bury me in Egypt. For I must ultimately lie with my fathers, die as all my fathers have died, and you shall carry me out. Wait a minute, okay,
right here.
Carry me out of Egypt. One cannot say that I will lie with my fathers means make me lie with my fathers in the cave, bury me. For immediately after this it is written, and thou shalt carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burying place. Further, we find that wherever the term lying with one's fathers is used I can't talk here, it's used, it denotes dying and not burial. For instance, and David lay with his fathers, and afterwards it states, and he was buried in the city of David. Okay, I'm lost here.
Okay, so in other words, there are two approaches to say when I lie down with my fathers. Either Rasha says it means that he died, or it means literally I want to be in the same place, to lie down in the same place with my fathers.
So what's the difference?
Well, because you
kind
can
of like what Claudia was saying, you know, where, you know, you have many different routes, if you will, to have that resting place.
you can be passed like your ancestors, but not physically buried in the same place that they are.
Here Rashi is just interested in the text, because you can read it actually two ways. So remember, first I said, well, he means that when he's dead. But you can read, when I lie down with my fathers, take me out from, when I, you know, it's as like he's like predicting his future. When I will be lying down with my fathers is going to happen. Take me out from Egypt and bury me in their burial place. So in other words, Rashi is like, what does it mean? Does it mean that when he's dead, or does it mean that when he will be lying with his father? So I think that it really means that when he's dead, and that's that.
Yeah,
But there's
it
two
sounds that way.
meanings in this particular
both
case.
metaphorical and literal.
Yeah.
But there's two things happening here. One is that Abram bought the caves in Hebron and Machpelah for the family, you know, not just as a family plot, but to make a bold statement that this is our land, and this is it for forever. You know, this is what God had promised us, more than just a piece of physical real estate. There's a lot of spiritual meaning behind that land. And then there's also the sense of lying with fathers, like the reference to King David, where he was buried in the city of David, not necessarily, I'm assuming from that, where his ancestors, where King David's ancestors were physically, but, you know, very different. You know, basically, this is a marker of, you know, I need to be brought back to the land of Israel.
Right. And then Sephora has, we have like a few minutes left. Sephora has, similarly, well, he is the matter of the deceased lying with his father is placing the bier with the deceased at the place of the eulogy. Like, you know, in America, right, we put the coffin in the chapel where we do the service, right?
Right.
As surrounded by the mourners and those eulogizing him. This is why the same expression is used throughout the book of Kings, whether describing the burial of kings, the righteous or the wicked. So no matter who is buried. So again, we're talking about what does it mean, Vashafti im avuti, when he's dead, but also when he is actually lying down in the coffin or whichever the, you know, shroud, or like in Israel. In Israel, they don't use coffin at all. You know, in Israel, they wrap in shroud. Shroud, is that the word? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Shroud, and that's the traditional burial. There's no coffin in Israel.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that makes sense. The lack of wood.
No, it's actually dates way back. It's just, yeah.
Well, I understand where it dates from, but
yeah. No, I mean, I remember burying my grandmother in Israel. I was in charge of her burial, and it was, you know, people bring her, the pallbearers bring the body in the shroud, not a coffin, which is a little weird, especially when it used to come.
Does that make it more, this may not sound right, but easier to do ashes to ashes and dust to dust?
Yes, that too, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to stop here. I do have, maybe I have Jen send you the rest. But I'm going to stop here, and I hope that this was not too depressing of a topic for you. Not exactly uplifting before New Year's. I don't know.
Well, go Fitz 2020.
We're at the end of the year and thinking of new beginnings. So talking about our own end at the end makes a certain amount of sense.
The circle of life. There you go. Thank you, Claudia.
And again, at this point, these things aren't as depressing as when we're young.
Right. And they're important, and it's important to talk about them, you know, because
we're able to make jokes about it.
Right.
It's very important to discuss things when you're well and you're clear-minded so that your spouse or loved one, significant other, whatever, doesn't have to make the hard decisions.
That's it. That's I think that's the takeaway from this. That Jacob was facing reality of what's going to happen, and therefore was able to conduct in the future his so to speak his own funeral. Unlike some people, whether the parents or the children, don't want to face the fact of the death up until the last moment. Then the preparation and arrangements become really, really difficult.
Right.
We have planned and prepaid for everything that we will need, asked our children for their input into some of the decisions, but when the time comes, there'll be nothing that they have to do except make one phone call to one person.
That's very considerate.
That's very considerate.
And again, I hope for everyone to live to at least Moses' age 120. So I hope, knock on wood, everyone is doing well.
Yes, staying very vibrant and
yes,
in good shape mentally.
Mentally, I was just gonna say, all of you certainly do. So wonderful. Again, great seeing you. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Feel well. Happy New Year.
Good luck tomorrow with
good luck.
Yeah.